Mornings in Greece are a feast for the senses. The variety of Greek breakfast and brunch options is mind-boggling. That's a beautiful sight.
Today in the kitchen, I'll create some of those sweet and savory options. Froutalia with potatoes and sausages, Greek yogurt pancakes with currants and honey, and sweet milk pie with phyllo.
Join me on my Greek table as I awaken your senses with an array of offerings to start off every day well.
When the sun rises, it's easy to think Greek for the most important meal of the day. Breakfast and its contemporary cousin, brunch, a newcomer to Greece, are both delicious affairs in this country. The traditions of Greek breakfast include some of the most unexpected and unusual ingredients in the world. Ancient hearty porridge made with trachana, a pebbly milk-based grain product, is often the breakfast of farmers throughout Greece. Savory omelets, eggs cooked in fresh greens, olives and cheese. The classic sesame ring called koulouri, sold on street corners all over Greece. And a favorite nibble on the way to work or school. Sweet and savory phyllo pies, and biscuits, and the all-time classic Greek yogurt with fruit and honey are a few of my favorite Greek breakfast foods.
Kalimera. That's Greek for good morning, and that's exactly what you see here today. How to start the day like a king, which is what the Greeks say. Lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper. And what do they mean? You want to start the day with a really good breakfast. I like to start my day with tea, not just any tea, Greek herbal tea, one of the healthiest ways to start the morning. I've got some of my favorites here, Greek mountain tea, Louisa, which has a nice lemony flavor, and something really unusual called ipophaes in Greek, which is sea buckthorn, and that's what I'm gonna make for you today. Just take a pretty big handful, pour it into the pot. With all of these herbal teas, you have to actually boil them and then let them steep. That's the traditional way of doing them, and it's how you get all of the great nutrients. These teas are really superfoods, and that's how Greeks have been doing it forever. Let it boil for 3 to 5 minutes. Let it steep, and then enjoy it. In Greece, it's very common to put a little bit of honey in your tea. And this is honey from the island of Ikaria, which happens to be where my family is from, so I have a special affinity for it. You can smell it already. Next, I'm gonna show you some great breakfast and brunch dishes so that you can start your day like a Greek king too.
There are so many different regional specialties enjoyed for breakfast all over Greece. I've taken inspiration from a few of my favorite places. Egg dishes from the Cycladic islands of Andros and Tinos. Fluffy pancakes from the Ionian island of Corfu. And I can't resist a little cue from northern Greece, where they make delicious breakfast pies.
Nothing like really good fresh pork sausage for breakfast, right? In the Greek kitchen, there are a couple of different tiers of breakfast. There's what we call πρωινό, which actually comes from the Greek word πρωί, for morning, and that's breakfast proper. And there's also something called δεκατιανό, from the Greek word for 10, δέκα, which is kind of like the mid-morning snack. The last couple of years have also seen brunch. grow in Greece, especially in the cities. It's a big thing. I'm making something here that is great for breakfast, great for 10 o'clock in the morning, and also great for brunch. It's a wonderful egg dish, and it's called Froutalia. It comes from the Kyklades, from two specific islands, from Andros and Tinos. This is, I guess, the most traditional version of it with great sausages and potatoes, and it's really hearty. Extra virgin olive oil. You can never have too much of that. A little bit of butter. That's more for flavor than anything else. The potatoes and the sausages have to be cooked before you add your eggs to this dish. I'm always on the lookout for great egg dishes. There are a lot more egg dishes in Greece than feta cheese omelets, and this is just one of them. It's important to season the potatoes as you cook them. I add a little bit of salt and a little pepper. Now that they've been cooking for a few minutes, I'm gonna add my sausages. And these are fresh pork sausages. If I were on Andros or Tinos, I would probably find sausages flavored with a little bit of fennel. You can use any really good quality fresh pork sausage. It'll work in this dish. I always cover my potatoes and sausages when I make Froutalia. And I do that because they cook a little bit more slowly that way. I don't want the potatoes to brown. I really just want them to almost steam in the olive oil and butter. And the sausages, of course, will cook in that heat too and impart all that great flavor to the potatoes. I'm using 8 eggs in this dish. Remember, this is a hearty dish. Last egg. Whisk that lightly. Little bit of milk. And I'm using a Greek cheese in this dish called kefalograviera. Can you say that? It's basically a very mild, somewhat nutty, yellow sheep's milk cheese. Just gonna add a little bit of salt and a touch of pepper. Let's see what's going on in that frying pan. That's looking good. As this starts to set, you just want to agitate those eggs a little bit so that they set evenly all over the surface and the bottom of the skillet. I think you can imagine that when this is finally done, it really is a lot more like a crustless pie than it is an omelet. I'm certainly not gonna flip it and fold it the way a classic French chef would make an omelet. This is more rustic Greek. I'm just gonna let the eggs set, and this will take probably around 10 minutes. The eggs are gonna be soft, fluffy, and really comforting. I wish you could smell this the way I can smell it, because it smells great. I'm gonna cut sort of like a pizza-sized slice of this to eat. Okay, there we go. That is so good. It's so fluffy and hearty at the same time. This is how Greeks do brunch or grunch.
And what do you drink with grunch? How about a grimosa, a Greek-inspired mimosa? Pour a shot, 1 ounce of chilled tsipuro into a tumbler, and ½ an ounce of chilled cinnamon-flavored simple syrup, and ½ an ounce of fresh strained lemon juice. Shake it up. Pour it into a champagne flute and add chilled Greek rosé sparkling wine. Bottoms up. Stini yasas, to your health.
I'm making pancakes for you today. They're called tiganites, and it's actually the same word that they were called in ancient Greek. I've got all-purpose flour in here. I'm adding a little whole wheat flour, some baking soda, baking powder, and salt. Just mixing all my dry ingredients. I've got Greek yogurt, an egg, and a little bit of milk. The Greek yogurt makes them a little bit fluffier, and it adds a little bit of sort of unexpected tartness to the pancakes. I'm adding this in stages, mixing it a little bit at a time, just to make sure that it's smooth. Dry into wet. This is exactly the consistency that we want. Nice and thick, but pourable. Next, I'm using my own little addition, currants. Kind of inspired by a recipe from the western side of Greece, from the island of Corfu, for a cornmeal pancake that has raisins in it. So I kind of took a little bit of inspiration from that and created my own Greek pancake. It's really hearty for breakfast and light and fluffy. So I'm just gonna cover this with plastic wrap and let it rest in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes. And that'll give us a nice, tender pancake when we're ready to fry them. The pancake batter is now rested, and I'm cooking my pancakes, my tiganites, in a little bit of Greek olive oil. This is a non-stick pan, so we don't need much. Looks good. You see how nice and fluffy they are? These cook for a few minutes. They're on the thicker side, so you want to make sure that the batter is cooked through, especially in the middle. And this is a pretty hearty breakfast, a breakfast fit for a king. Now we have to top our Greek tiganites with Greek yogurt, nice and thick, just a dollop. And I have a couple of delicious spoon sweets here. Those are basically fruit preserves. This is sour cherry, nice thick syrup. I want some of that to fall by the side. Some fresh strawberries, which go really nicely both with the yogurt and with the cherries. A little bit of Greek honey. In Greece, we use honey instead of maple syrup. Oh, that's a beautiful breakfast. And a little sprig of mint, just for good measure. And that's my beautiful Greek pancakes. Now it's time to taste the tiganites. Had a little bit of yogurt on there. You know what the Greeks say? Η Kalimera από το πρωί φαίνεται. A good day starts in the morning. And if this is the first flavor in your mouth, your day is gonna be great. So tender, this is total comfort brunch. To your health, a Greek mimosa. Isigian.
Greek coffee is one of the most traditional early morning quaffs. Made with finely ground coffee and water in a special long-handled tapered pot called a briki. Baristas use a small whisk to stir the coffee and water together while it heats either over an open flame or, as connoisseurs prefer it, submerged into heated sand. When it starts to swell and form a creamy foam on top, the briki is removed and the coffee is poured into small demi-tasse cups. Sip it until you get to the lower third of the cup, then stop, lest you get a mouthful of those warm grinds.
It's great to have variety on a Greek breakfast table or a Greek brunch table. I'm making a really traditional pie called Galatopita Milk Pie. Who would have thought you could make an entire pie with milk as the main ingredient? Leave it to a Greek shepherd to come up with that one. I'm gonna heat my milk and add sugar and whisk that all together. You wanna be very careful not to burn the milk, so you have to keep an eye on it. And while that's warming, I'm just gonna mix my solid ingredients together. I start with fine semolina, a little bit of cornstarch. That gives the final milk pie a really silky texture, and just a pinch of salt. Just mix that, make sure it's well combined. 2 eggs go into the filling. You want to make sure this is smooth, so you whisk it well. The eggs, of course, bind the whole mixture together. A little bit of honey goes in next, and I'm using pine honey in this dish. And vanilla extract. Just adding my saffron. Krokos in Greek. A little bit of lemon zest. The saffron and the lemon are beautiful together. It tastes really good. Just whisking this all together, and you can see the saffron actually has colored the mixture already. See how beautiful that looks? This egg and flour mixture should be almost the consistency of pancake batter. See that? Now comes the tricky part. I want to temper this a little bit. And what does that mean? That means I'm going to add a little bit of my hot milk mixture to my egg and flour mixture carefully, slowly, and whisk it. And I want to do that so that when I pour this back in there and reheat it, the eggs don't curdle. Now that the sugar's dissolved in the milk and the mixture is hot, I'm going to add a little bit of this to my egg and flour mixture, whisking it as vigorously as you can so that the egg doesn't curdle. You can add just a little bit more, and then I'm going to pour this mixture back into my pot and heat it. Now, there are a few different types of milk-based pies in the Greek kitchen. I decided to make the Galatopita today because, to my mind, that's actually the Greekest of the 3 of them. It was born in that rural region in the northern part of the country, a place where shepherds have roamed forever. So there's always been a lot of milk, and pies of all sorts have always been a tradition in that part of Greece. My egg mixture is tempered with the hot milk. I'm gonna pour this back into the pot and stir it as I do that, whisk it. Get as much of that in there as possible. Now, what you wanna do here is cook this very slowly. I have it on low heat until it starts to thicken. You're basically making a custard. And when that happens, I'm gonna add a little bit of butter, which gives it that great taste. It's right at that point now where I'm about to add the butter, and I want you to see how thick this is. Basically just plops off the spoon. I want to get my butter in here. This is what you want to look for when you know the custard is ready. Those sort of pothole-like bursts of steam at the surface of this mixture. I'm ready to roll out my phyllo to finish off the galatopita. The one thing you want to remember is just to keep it covered while you work with it. So roll it open carefully. This will take 6 sheets on the bottom of the pan. The thing that distinguishes the Galatopita from other types of milk pies in the Greek kitchen is that this one is actually open-faced. The feel is only on the bottom. A little bit of melted butter. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna take my first sheet. You wanna work a little bit fast, especially if your kitchen's warm. If the phyllo tears a little bit, not to worry, no one's gonna see it. Once it's baked, you'll never know. That's the beauty of working with good phyllo. A little bit of butter. Okay. Now, the other types of milk pie that you find in Greece, there are two of them basically. One is called galaktoboureko. Gala is the word for milk, and that's a thicker filling, and that pie is covered. The third type of kind of milk-based custard pie is called bourratsa, and that tends to be a variety of different things. It can be a custard filling, it could also be some savory fillings. I want to make sure the edges are well buttered because I don't want them to dry out before I have to turn them in to form the rim. So this is going right into my pan. I'm trying to get all of it in there. I don't want to waste any of it. Now there's one last trick, and I'm going to show you in a second as soon as I roll my rim around the periphery of this pan. To form the rim, you're basically just folding in the overhang, the bits of phyllo that are hanging right over the edge. You can see that it's starting to dry up a little on the edges. No big deal, it's not gonna show once this is baked. And this gets a little bit of a topping. It's basically an egg wash with a little bit of sugar and a little bit of water. So by adding this to the top, it gives it kind of a nice crust. And basically what this does is lends a really nice sort of caramel finish to the whole pie. You can just do this to get it all over the surface. And there we go. This is going into a 360-degree oven for about 40 to 45 minutes. Smells good. You have to let the Galatopita cool down. And for me, the last step is always finishing it with a little powdered sugar and a touch of cinnamon. That combination of cinnamon, powdered sugar, and custard, it's awesome. I want to taste this. It smells great. This is intoxicating. It's so earthy and comforting and soothing. That is great for breakfast or brunch.